Okay, this is an appropriate time. Given you're having such a good time, you should join the Calgary Mountain Club. If you want to get on the email list or join, it's $10. Sign up at the desk after the show. Right? This is so humiliating having to do these announcements. We're at the 5th show now, and one's wondering what to do. One feels a bit like Elizabeth Taylor's 5th husband. You know what to do, but how to make it interesting. So I was waiting to get that. So I think it's pretty much time to bring out the hulks that Sharon has been alluding to. And the Chippendale group will be the next 3 speakers. Starting off with Barry Blanchard. He joined the CMC in 1980. He was born in Calgary. Barry, over the course of many years, became one of Canada's best-known climbers as well as a mountain guide. Barry's routes are too numerous to tabulate, but the high points include one-day ascents of Polar Circus and Slipstream, alpine ascents of the Cassine Ridge, ascents in the Alps and Yosemite, tested him before he made the 3rd, ascent of Alberta North Face, and the North Pillar of North Twin, perhaps the hardest alpine route in Canada. Later, Barry was to climb the north face of Rakaposhi with Dave Cheesemond and Kevin Doyle. Today, Barry lives in Canmore. His slideshow is called The Grand Fromage. Barry Blanchard.
Yeah, thanks, and thanks everyone for coming, and yeah, boy, hard acts to follow, so man, the people who've spoke so far have just all done a fabulous job, and I'm pretty psyched, so hopefully I hold my psych through my talk here. Yeah, I guess I gotta hit a button here. Yeah, the Grand Fromage, for those of you who don't know or don't speak French, that means the big cheese, and yeah, I joined the Calgary Mountain Club in probably 1980 or 81, and about the same time in the early 80s, this guy, David Cheesemond, immigrated to Canada from South Africa. And I actually heard of David before I ever got to meet him. And I heard of him and I heard him before I ever got to meet him. Because first Urs told me, man, this guy's really good. And I thought, you know, how good can he be? You know, Kevin and I, we're putting all this time into it. We're good. We got to be good. You know, and I was very competitive and quite ambitious at that time in my life, and somewhat obnoxious some of the time. But anyways, around that time, I was spending a lot of time climbing on Mount Yamnuska, and I'd gotten into a deal of trying to free some of the aid sections out of some of the climbing routes. And Kevin Doyle and I had climbed Balrog, I think the year before, maybe 2 years before, and it hadn't been climbed in a while, and you know, me as a neophyte climber, I was impressed that Kevin ran into Urs on a bus in Calgary the week after we climbed it, and Urs had said to him, that was good for Calgary, and I thought, wow, that was cool. So Jeff and I went up there, who we affectionately called Junior, and always have called Junior, which means junior. And we were able to do the route with just 1 point of aid, and I just couldn't get turned around in the crux and get faced the right way. So I was all psyched to get back up there and take this point of aid out of it and free up another one of the lines on Yam. But that was the time that I first heard David. I was climbing on another route on Yam, and he and Tim Friesen were on Balrog making the first free ascent, scooping me and Jeff. And the first thing I heard of him was just this really joyful, you know, rejoicing kind of yodel type call off the mountain that he'd made it to the end of the pitch and he was safe. Tim could come up, and it was Bileo. Where are those guys? Damn it! So I finally got to meet him that winter at the pub night of the Calgary Mountain Club. And we talked on the phone, and he'd made a point of coming down to share some information about the Cassine Ridge, which he had soloed the year before with Kevin and I. We were making plans to head there the next spring with Jason Maitland and Bill Stark. And yeah, he had the maps, and you know, didn't look like Superman when I walked in the room, but yeah, you know, sat down, started having some beers, and just had a really good time. And I remember he pulled out the map of the casino and pointed to a point very close to the airstrip where you land up there and said, "Right, this is where I put on skis for the very first time." And then skied off to the Casino Ridge by himself. He was good. So the next winter in 1983, in April, we got to go climbing together. And the first time we got to go climbing together was on the Andromeda strain. This thing was called the Andromeda strain on Mount Andromeda because everyone who tried it had had such a hard time on it. It was getting to be such a big strain to get up this thing. And Kevin and I and James Blanchard and I had made attempts, and Kevin and I had made it up into here somewhere, and I think Kevin and I kind of figured out where the route should go. And in between, me going up and spending a night up here and then coming over here and then rappelling all the way back down, Dave would come up with a partner and go all the way up there and spend a night and rappel all the way back down. Then I'd come again and I'd grab all his anchors on the way up and thinking, I got all this good gear, Gonna take this off the top of the mountain with me. And then I'd rappel down and leave it all in situ. And Dave would come and pull out my gear and think, oh man, I got all this good gear. Take it up the mountain and put it in on rappel. So on the third attempt, we decided just to get together and try to do the route together. And it was a really great, cool trip. And we went up here and spent a night in a snow cave here. Took 5 hours for me to figure out the crux pitch here. I did 2.5 hours the first day, and Dave dug us a really palatial snow cave while Tim and I did this. And then the next day I spent another 2.5 hours finishing it off. I remember coming down at the end of the first day and coming to the snow cave and that was above this pitch. And getting in, and Dave had it already set up. There was anchors, sleeping bags were rolled out. It was like a turn-down service. And my bag was rolled out. There was hot soup, and I was wet, exhausted, scared, eyes like hubcaps. I'd been having a conversation with the Lord for 2.5 hours. And I was wigged. And I'm like, man, I don't know about this. It's dark outside. And I remember Dave turning to me and goes, yes, it will all look better in the morning, man. It will all look better in the morning. And sure enough, it did. It did look better in the morning. It still took 2.5 hours to finish it, but we ended up getting into the upper couloir of this route that was quite a classic for a while, and maybe melting out of classic shape now. I was there actually this winter with a client, and sadly, most of the ice was gone in the lower half of the route. So maybe it'll come back, maybe it won't. This is Tim traversing out to the famous exit pitch, which is on the cover of the Alpine Guide, Sean Doherty's great book of lies and gross inaccuracies. I understand soon to be Raphael Sawinski's great book of lies and gross inaccuracies. Hopefully I can help straighten some of that out. But so the next winter, we're getting together now, climbing quite a bit, Dave and I, and Ezra said on rock, the man was quite a genius climber. Not the best technician around, couldn't move as well as someone like Dave Morgan on rock, but could just get up things, could put it all together, handle the risk, figure out the gear, get to the end of the pitch. So on the big picture, he made it happen. But one night in the fall of 84 or 83, I was living in Canmore, and I came into Calgary. I took the bus in, and I was going to go to Dave's, and we were going to spend time planning for our expedition to Rakaposhi. And instead, we did a little bit of planning. We, went up to the room and started looking at stuff, and then we started drinking beer, and 6-pack into it each, 6 beer each. We weren't doing much planning anymore. And I looked on his desk and I said, there was this picture sitting on his desk. I go, oh my God, where's that? Look at that ice line. And he goes, oh my God, you weren't supposed to see that. I thought, man, it must be in the Andes or something. He says, and finally he said, it's the east face of Mount Fayman. We have to go there. So we did go there. About a couple weeks later, he and Carl Tobin and I took off for a weekend to try to climb this great strip of ice leading up the center of the east face of Fay. And it was a typical David weekend. I remember it was a long weekend, and he had to be back at work work on Tuesday morning. So the plan was he and Carl drove up from Calgary, picked me up in Canmore at midnight. We drove to Lake Louise. We started skiing. We had 2 pairs of skis each. We would ski to the Moraine Lake shelter, cook shelter. We would sleep for a couple hours. We would leave 1 set of skis there. We would ski to the face and climb the face over 2 days, come down, get the other set of skis and ski out. And Carl would come and get the second set of skis later that week. And Dave would be, in time for his engineering job on Monday morning or Tuesday morning. And my first set of skis broke within about 50 feet of the truck, so I had 1 set of skis, so it was going to be a longer trip. And we got in there, and the rest of it kind of worked. We slept in the cook shelter for a couple hours, got up, went, skied up to the face, had to sit while the sun came off of it, and then got up on the face and started doing some hard climbing. I was like the young tiger, and Dave was the captain of the ship, the master and commander, kind of orchestrated psych and ability and line and everything to try to come up with a winning combination. And I did what I was good at, I guess, trying to get up this thin ice. And the only reason I got up that is I could tie off an icicle about the size of my leg somewhere in there. And the next pillar fell to Carl Tobin. And Carl was this guy who looked like Tarzan. He looked like Edgar Rice Burroughs' Tarzan walked off the page, just musculature like I'd never seen before. And powerful, powerful ice climber from Alaska. And he went up on this pillar, and Dave and I are sitting down at the belay. We've got our ice axes kind of driven in the snow, right? Great anchor. And Carl's up there, and he's starting to breathe really heavy. He's like, and we're like, oh my God, it looks like he's getting hard. And suddenly he's like, watch me. I can't hold on anymore. I'm going to jump. And Dave and I look at each other and at the ice axes in the snow. You're going to what? You're going to what? I'm going to jump. And sure enough, he jumps. And he lands on this snow ledge there and catches his balance. And he doesn't fall off and take us to the bottom of the mountain. It was so superhero and so cool. So Dave looks at me and he goes, right, I guess you better try. So I go up there and, get close to where Carl fell off, and I was able to clip his ice axes as protection and then hang from one of my axes a little higher and put in a screw and go over the top. And my vision was coming in at the top. I was seeing lights. But we got up the pitch and kept going up the mountain. And this is the next morning. That night we needed someplace to stay, and Dave, we were digging out a ledge to just sit on the side of the mountain. His leg punched into this hole. He said, wait, let's down here. And sure enough, there was a cave down there, and we were able to get inside and stay out of the elements and be safe. East face, you get some sun, and too much sun and the cornices fall off and you get clobbered by them. And this is Carl leading up the strip of ice just before the cornice somewhere up there broke loose and came down and hammered us. And I took a chunk in the shoulder, and it was all pretty scary, but just bruised my shoulder so I couldn't lead. Aw, darn. Guess it's up to you guys. And they did a great job, of course. And it's interesting, in a lot of ways, I think alpinism picks you. I don't know if you really pick it. Our snow cave, and having a conversation that night about philosophy, and Dave saying, right, life is a pork chop. Why not? It holds together just as well as any other philosophy. And this from a guy who earned a PhD in engineering, and he told me a story that he was off climbing when he was awarded his PhD, and they said, if you come back, we will give you a PhD with honors. And he said, oh no, a PhD is just fine enough. I want to stay climbing. So, so the storm for the last 2 days on the route. And I was really cranky about this picture. It's been storming for 2 days, avalanches coming down everywhere, and we've run out of food. We have one box of Smarties left. And, I'm coming across this traverse towards Carl, and I get over to him. I'm like, God, I hate this, blah, 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 damn storm, I hate this situation, it's so hard. And Carl looked at me and gave me some other really good philosophy, and that was, hey man, it don't gotta be fun to be fun. So I was like, right, don't have to be fun to be fun. Okay, suck it up. And it was Monday night then. Dave wasn't gonna make it back to work, and okay. Yeah, we split the box of Smarties in our last snow cave. That's 17 apiece, and I knew I was with really hard guys because they didn't even ask for all the red ones. And, yeah, we had got up over here and traversed and come down here, and this is a summer picture, but in winter we had to cross Moraine Lake with snow on it. So Carl was lifting me up and pushing me forward because it was never any good to put David out front because he would always just float on top of the snow. And I'm just going to race through these other pictures because I didn't rehearse enough and I made it too long. These are all pictures of North Twin, which is another story. Probably the greatest adventure I ever had with Dave. At that time on East Face of Faye, what I really enjoyed was witnessing the camaraderie between he and Carl and how they both just felt so comfortable up there and just did it. And this is a brief overview of our trip to Rakaposhi, but I have to mention this. We had about 60 loads to get up to our base camp. We had this problem, what if a porter drops a load, how do we know which one it was? So we numbered all our loads and we're having this discussion about how to figure this out. And Dave comes up with a solution. Right, we will take a felt pen and we will put the load number marker on the porter's forehead. And we all looked at him. Are you nuts? We can't put the porter number on the guy's forehead. And he said, right. Oh, okay, no, we cannot put the porter number on the guy's forehead. But, yeah. There he is. And, he passed away on the Hummingbird Ridge in 1987. And in 2000, Parks Canada took some pictures of him still up there in the pied-troisième position, clinging to the side of Mount Logan. And not a week goes by that I don't think about this guy. And I really love running into his daughter, Saren, because I can see him in her face. And I realize that our partners live on in us, and they live on in their descendants. And yeah, I love this guy. Thank you.
In 1983, Kevin travelled to Europe, where his climbs include the Central Pillar of Fresnay and the Igo North Face. His Himalayan exploits include the North Face of Rakaposhi and a near success on the Rupal Face of Nanga Parbat. His slideshow is entitled Back in the Day, Snippets from the 80s. Kevin.
Don't worry, I'll be quick. All I got to do is find the button here and not get too carried away.
A little arrow there.
It's a small arrow.
A little arrow. Give it a try.
There we go. When I joined the club, and it actually was, I think, in around 1980 or 79, somewhere in there, struck me that it was a club and remains a club of individuals. And this show is just going to be a little bit more about most of the characters. There'll be a few digressions into climbing shots, but a lot of it will be about the characters. This is Stu Broker, below Yamnuska. I guess I can look at it down here. Stu Broker, below Yamnuska, with my sister's bathing suit on, which we'd found in her car that we'd borrowed for the day to get up there. It included such early sport climbing feats as Mini Gonda. Here's Pav Lazic and Bill Betts having a little fun on that one. Note the fine climbing shoes. Similar vintage to what you saw John Martin in earlier on. Now, because, of course, the Alpine Club had climbed just about everything, and what they hadn't climbed, the CMC had already climbed all the rest of it before we got there. we took up into other activities such as slab surfing. Stu was a big proponent of slab surfing, and here he is in action at Exshaw. There was a route up there called Dust Never Sleeps that I think a lot of you guys will know what it was. We went up to climb it, and we were disappointed to find that somehow the dust that usually caused all the difficulties had been washed off, and so therefore made it perfect. You could actually get up it quite easily, and also still, due to the nature of the rock, you could get some good trajectory downwards. So you can see some, you want to talk about ski tracks, these are way more exciting. And I'm not sure if those are Starks or Brokers or who was there, but there was Bill Stark, Barry, Stu, and myself, and a couple others. Lots of early adventures, climbing with friends that I still hold dear and who are here tonight. One was the big Indian that was just speaking here a minute ago, my very dear friend Barry, and Bill Stark, who's also in the audience tonight. I met Bill in the don't bring the hook out too early though, Chick, because I got to tell some of this stuff. I met Bill in the movie line down outside the Odeon downtown in Calgary with his girlfriend at the time. And so then, as I started climbing, I got to know Barry a little bit better. Here's Barry in some of the fine climbing attire of the era. KOA, totally waterproof, non-breathable lower wear, always a crowd pleaser. Barry was able to manage to drag that bad gear of his up all sorts of hard stuff, including, I guess this is Sky Pilot. And the story about this is quite long and involved, so I won't tell it all. Suffice to say, I was quite hungover, and there was a bad sour gas smell in the valley at that time, so Barry did all the hard leading. Me, at the top of that same climb, I think this would be Polish ice climbing technique of some sort. I don't recommend it. Laurie Skreza had also tried to teach me how to, keep the box thing and so on, but I always seem to go outside the box. Here's Barry on Nemesis. We started branching out a little further afield, doing some of the climbs that we'd just read about before. And along the way, of course, met some of our heroes, such as Urs Collin, who spoke earlier. This is Urs just coming down off of Andromeda Strain, I believe. And he looks natty, I would say. And of course, now we're going to get into the bad climbing shots, so I'll zip through them fairly quickly. Gimme Shelter, which I was pretty chuffed to get up with Tim Friesen. Tim at the rather dubious bivvy halfway up. There's Tim on some of the better ice on the climb where we could actually relax enough to take a picture, and you weren't worried about wearing the leader. And of course, Le Grand Fromage again. Now, I got my own story quickly to tell about Dave. Barry and I had first heard that Dave was in the valley, and I heard the story that Urs, that guy's pretty good. and I have to say that at that time, my first impression was, okay, well, he went up onto Cascade Falls with his buddy, broke a crampon. He didn't break a crampon. His buddy breaks a crampon, falls off, breaks his ankle, and they fail. How good could they be? How good could they really be? Well, it turned out he was really good. So anyway, Dave dragged me off and had a picture. I think he poached this picture out of Ursa's collection of this particular climb. North face of Good Sir, and that's me. And another quick story, only quick, is if you look at the bottom of that, you'll see that it goes out quite a ways. And so I had sort of bouldered out, and it's maybe 40 feet out, quite steep. I'm pretty burnt. Get up to the top. I was actually about another 5 feet up from this picture when Dave calls up to me, says, Kev, you're going to have to go down and put a screw in. It doesn't look very good for the picture. so I climb down, put the screw in, and then I think he's belaying me now because I'm now really just about to fall off. And then I look back to see he's out here. He's dropped the rope, and he's, yeah, it's perfect, Kev, just a bit higher. There, that's it. Okay, I got it. Okay, you're on again. So then that climb turned into one of the many anvil tiptoeing adventures that I would say are pretty common to a lot of us in the club, where you go out into the mountains and you tiptoe out onto that anvil that is each mountain that it can be in bad weather, and then it beats you into some sort of a better human being. So, and then we'll just move on a little quicker here. This is Kitchener, north face on Kitchener. I'm good? I can calm down? All right, that's good to hear. And here's leading up to the finger-licking good pitch that I keep talking about over the years. And there's Barry coming up towards the top by the cheeseburger, not named after Dave, I don't think. And then eventually led us farther afield to Alaska, again with Jason Maitland and with Bill Stark. And Bill got sidetracked with some young maiden up there. I can't remember what happened there, but Barry and Jason bailed to Calgary, and then Barry and I went on to climb the Cassin in a 7-day storm that killed 3 people and froze a guy's hands off. There's Barry partway through it. That's about as cold as I've ever been. There's Barry at the top with there's the cattle track coming down the other side where all the sticks are snapped off by the wind and even aluminum stuff broken off. I won't bother telling the story about the Reinhold Messner ski poles, but you can ask me about that later. Then we went over to Europe. Of course, under the tutelage of Chick Scott. Chick had done the Eiger Sanction filming and done a lot of guiding over there. And we had all, of course, both of us read Conquistadors of the Useless and all those other good things. So anyway, Barry wore painter pants, cotton painter pants, of course, for all his alpine climbs, usually about a foot too long, as you can see by the way they're rolled up. And then I wore the man-eating clam pants, which were a pair of bad underwear that I'd bought from the Army surplus. But they were wool, and they worked. We did some time relaxing in the South Coast, tried our hand at sport climbing and so on down there, and had a really, really, really good adventure. That was in 1980. 83, I was back. This is actually the offending picture that was in that bad magazine, except for I have to remind you that this whole picture was only the size of Ben Johnson's bicep in that whole spread, so I didn't do very well off of that. And I was with Carl Klassen on this second trip in 83. Carl was a thoughtful soul who lasted about 3 climbs and then bailed for the coast to go relax in the south. And then we ran into a bunch of other club members that year, and of course this is Chalk Quinn. This is in the BLA campground near Chamonix, which is a bit of a cesspool of a campground just up the hill from the Montanvert Railway. What he's doing here in this picture is he's preparing foie à la biolay. And what that is a very cheapest cut of pork liver that you could possibly find, because pork's the cheapest over there. And what you do then, he's being helped here, his sous chef is one of the Edmund aspirants, who were some punkers from Amsterdam. What you do is you put the pork in, sear it at very high heat over a stove, and then knock it off a few times into the needles, rinse it off with the help of your sous chef, place it back on the grill and heat at high temperature. Repeat this about 7 or 8 times, and there you have it. Foie à la biolay. A fine dish, which I would highly recommend, although slightly rubbery. And then here's a picture of the camp. I think a really good picture of kind of the times the way they were back then in Cham. And you could have seen this same picture in Snell's Field or in the BLA or any campground around there of foreign climbers meeting each other, getting to know each other. That's me chit-chatting with the main Edmund. The aspirants are on my right side there, and the left side in the picture. But Edmund was a piece of work. He had sterilized himself because he didn't like the way the world was going. But he could really climb, and I'll tell you, he rode a mean luge d'été. He got arrested over that one, but that's another whole story too. Okay, now we move on to the Eiger, which in 83 was it was the last climb I did that year, second last climb, I guess. Did this with Steve Briggs from England, who later confided in me, to me, that it was his first alpine climb. So he was a gifted rock climber, luckily, and so I was able to drag him up the ice parts. But unfortunately, Steve's no longer with us. was killed by tribesmen in the north of Pakistan. There's me on the top, sporting the gear of the era. This is, again, a quick cruise through Rakaposhi. I'm going to point out the ridge. I'm going to just step back here. That's not a great, I think that's it there. It goes up there and then across up that blocky thing at the top. Great adventure for all of us, again under the tutelage of Dave. Wait for me, for I am your leader. he would say in the morning when we'd be standing out there in his Sam I Am underwear while we were leaving him behind in the morning, heading off to haul loads. There's one of our camps high up. Same picture Barry showed, I believe. Amazing ridge. I'd highly recommend that route if anybody wants a good adventure, although you don't want to stay in that camp too long. Other exciting camps. There's us coming down just before we did the final summit attempt. Tim Friesen was on that climb, Greg Cron, there's Chris Dale, Barry, myself, Dave, and there's probably a couple more that I'm not remembering. Langley, Steve Langley, very important one. I got a really good picture of him that I never put in here. Here's a picture of Barry after that climb, and at the time, Barry looked over at me and said, Kev, we look like 50-year-old businessmen. And the sad truth is that's kind of where we are now. But you know what? We don't look that bad. We look better than in those pictures. Here we are at the base of the Nanga Parbat, the RuPaul face, with myself on the left, then, oh geez, I'm losing it here. Barry, Ward Robinson, Barry, and Mark Twight, Dr. Doom. And there's what greeted us when we got there, first day in, right over our route. Thank you very much. Luckily, but I figured the logic was, okay, it's got to be clean now. So up we went, and this is what we encountered at the top. We had a huge storm that if you go on the internet, you can see lots of stuff about that trip, about what we shouldn't and shouldn't have done. Here's Ward just before we threw our ropes off on the way down. That's another whole story. And Mark managed to snap this picture in a really, really heavy storm. We did, after throwing our ropes off accidentally, I should probably tell that story. We were coming down, and we were just really, really heavy avalanches. Hanging from one screw would be 4 of us, not able to breathe, just being pummeled by these huge spindrift avalanches for like hour at a time, wondering if we were going to get out of there alive. Finally got out of that mess, down onto the main snowfield below. And Barry went down first, and we started pulling the ropes. I may not tell this exactly right, but the gist will be correct. And I was up top, Barry was down below, and he was pulling the rope as he went, and he thought I had my hand on it and was pulling it as well. And so I yelled down at Barry, I said, I'm letting go of the rope. And he yelled up or something which I thought meant, yeah, okay, let go of the rope. So then all of a sudden, the rope just got ripped out of my hands. And I'm like, boy, he really wants that rope. And what had actually happened is that he had heard, let go of the rope. So he let go of the rope, and I let go of the rope, and then gravity did the rest. And so anyway, we get down to the camp, and Mark Twight, we're starting to dig the camp, digging tent platforms and so on, and the tent blew away, one of them, as Mark was trying to get the poles inside of it, and just looked at us, looked at the poles, threw them over his shoulders. I guess we won't need those anymore. So we dug a snow hole, and Ward was not feeling so well, as you can see in the picture, and he was moaning all night. And Ward, shut up. We're trying to sleep. Makes me feel better. Well, there's 3 of us, and it definitely does not make us feel better. So anyway, we got down out of that. But the big story about the bag is that here we are up on this peak, one of the highest faces in elevation gain in the world, ugly situation, and we had seen this bag on the side going up, and so we went over, cut it open, looked inside, 2 ropes, same brand, same individual colors that we were using, same length, same ice screws, that's an easy one because everybody was using Chenards, same chocolate bars from Japan that you could usually only get in North America. How this happened, we don't know, but it was like a package from the big guy. So anyway, we got down and it came from, the package was left by Japanese climbers, and I should have explained that, who they had lost a pair of friends high up on the mountain in a storm, similar type storm, and they had come up to leave that for them in case they got down to that point, so they would have a way, some food and a way of getting down. And we found their tent, and of course, you know, rather macabrely cut it open to see if there's anybody in there, but there was nobody in there. So those two were lost, but that's how the package from God got there. So here we are, we made it. Now I gotta find the arrow again here. There's Barry, little gun shopping in the bazaar, and probably in Pindi. There's back when Chick was my slumlord in Bowness. Always good to treat your slumlord well so he doesn't boot you out or raise your rent. And that was when I was living with Brian Wallace, another talented young climber who's no longer with us, died on the north face of Lougheed. And no show would be complete without a fine portrait of Mr. Jeff Marshall, who's about to speak in a couple of minutes here. This is really a fine example of Calgary couture at its finest. Jeff was a leading edge always in that regard. And it's all about the friendship. This is us scuffling up some gully towards some climb. And there's my lovely wife, who's in the audience, and who incidentally I introduced to climbing and now climbs way better than I do. Know how that happened. And the best part about the club for me is of course my dear friends, and I have lots of dear friends, but this is one of my dearest, as you all know, and growing old together, which I kind of think we're doing now, Bear. And you know, it always leads to that question though, why do I do it? So with that, I'll turn it over to Jeff.
Thanks, Kevin. It's a good show. The last speaker. Okay, Jeff Marshall. In 1986, he soloed Polar Circus on both tiers of the Weeping Wall in a day and established the first grade 7 ice route on Mount Patterson. As a rock climber, he is without parallel, including routes like Astro Yam and above and beyond, both 511 climbs, and the Iron Butterfly on Mount Wintower, a 511 A4 route. His solo routes include The Maker in 1990, the same year he soloed Missionary's Crack, Necromancer, and Chalkstone Corner in a morning. His alpine ascents include the first ascent of the north face of Mount Diadem and Tuzo. Further afield, he climbed the Central Ice Range, Peru, Alaska, and the Northwest Territories. So, Jeff Marshall, the Wild Boys, please give him a round.
Okay, just like Kevin and Barry, I'm a product of the 80s. I joined in the early 80s, and I owe it to this fellow, Urs Callan. He met me at Okotoks Boulder, told me to come down to the Cecil on the Wednesday, so I did. I was 18 years old, and it's all bikers. So I dressed up, and there I was for about 2 hours. Oh, I'm sorry? Oh, I'm right, okay. There we go. Okay, well anyway, yeah, so I sat there for about 2 or 3 hours waiting for somebody to show up, and these guys were all looking at me. I thought, oh no. I didn't know if I was in the wrong place or not. But anyway, so pretty much the first thing that I got introduced to the Mountain Club was this fellow, Brian Wallace. And Brian was, what can you say about Brian? He was just a naturally gifted climber. He was fearless. He was a gymnast, a martial artist, and we hooked up right away. And we did, I guess, the third ascent of CMC Wall over 4 days, one fall. And I couldn't believe this guy. Like, I hadn't heard of him. I didn't know anything about him. He was just, you know, different. And then the year later, he hooked up with Bill Stark here. And when we were doing CMC, well, we had pretty much an epic on it, but we get to the top and he goes, you know, I think this can be free climbed. I go, oh, good for you. So he got a hold of Bill and he convinced him, and they went out the next year and they did the first one-day ascent of CMC wall, and they free climbed it at the same time. So that was pretty impressive. That was really big news back then. I think that was 85 or something. And the one thing that, like BJ, he was a really good friend of mine, and he just liked to be with me, and he wasn't an ice climber, but I tried to do a little stint in the Yoho Valley one year, and he decided to come in and he was going to help me out, and I ran out of gas, and he was trying to keep me going, but of course I didn't want to, so anyway. And this is a picture of him on Nemesis, and the only ice climb he'd ever done before this was Cascade, I think. So we get to the top, and I'm looking at him and going, you know, or a pitch from the top, and I go, I'm pretty tired, Brian. He goes, well, I can lead it, and I'm going, no, I don't think so. So anyway, we finished it, and but yeah, very impressive fellow. And and then in '86, like he'd take long periods of time off without rock climbing at all, and then he'd just jump on these things. And in '86, we started up this route on Yamnuska. There was a combination of people, but he opened up the first half of the route. And what we would do was we were climbing this blank rock, you'd head out, you'd just have sky hooks to place wherever you could. And sometimes that was a good long distance apart, and drill a bolt. And he'd just go out and do it, you know, and take falls and stuff. And he's like, okay, I'll get back up there. Try it again. But this is where he was really comfortable. And this is a picture of Brian, I think about 40 feet out, hanging off one of those hooks, drilling a bolt. And if he peels the edge there, he's coming right off. But yeah, this is the lower half of the route. And without Brian, I don't know if this would have happened. Like, he was the inspiration for the whole thing. So gotta hand it all to him. And then, like I said, in, I think it was, yeah, '88, he just wanted to come out and do stuff with me, and it was a long weekend, and what are you doing? I said, well, actually, we're planning on going and trying to climb this new route. So he said, well, can I come? And I said, well, yeah, I guess so. So we went out, and we were halfway up the route, I guess, and Brian made his decision. We ended up finishing the route, and we went another way, but he took a 70-foot fall and killed himself, and this is the last picture of him alive. So he was a really good friend. It was really, really a shame. And then there was this fellow, Steve DeMaio. I met him in '86 while I was working at Mountain Equipment Co-op. Two very different characters. I was wild and, you know, out of control, and he came from kind of a conservative, you know, Toronto background. But one thing I didn't realize is that he'd been climbing really serious rock back there, doing the same stuff we were doing, but on shorter cliffs. So he comes out and I say, well, you know, you're gonna have to cut your grade back about 2 or 3 grades, because this is serious stuff out here. And he goes, okay. So anyway, he turned me around pretty quick. And we picked this fellow up to go do these routes. Brian Gross, he was part of the Cheeseman trilogy. He was responsible for, I think, mostly for the 3 routes that they did on Yamnuska. He was the talented rock climber of the crew with Dave Cheeseman, Chuck Quinn, and Brian Gross. So we brought him along. He wanted to, it was actually his idea to do these routes in the first place. So, yeah, he was quite a character. He's a sailor now somewhere. And so there's a difference in styles. I mean, Steve was passionate, he was fun-loving, you know, pretty out of control, and Brian, you know, he was a lot more conservative. So anyway, we teamed up. We did a couple of routes on Yamnuska. We did Astro Yam, and then this one called Above and Beyond. And just a shot from Above and Beyond there. And there we are. We just finished at dusk, and again, you can pretty much see the 3 different personalities that made up the team there. Steve's just, he's out of control. He's totally on fire. And the thing about Steve is, I mean, you couldn't stop him. He just wanted to rock climb everything, you know. And classic example is we went out to do Mount Fable, and there was 2 feet of snow. We were going to try the south face of Mount Fable. So I said to him, I said, you know, this isn't going to happen. It's going to take us days to approach. So he gets all pissed off. He goes, okay, well, let's go climb on Yam. So I'm thinking, oh, okay, we'll go do a nice route on Yam. So we go back to Yam. He goes, hey, you know, there's this new route. So we did a new route that day. And I guess we got called a dynamic duo. We actually tore quite a strip out of the rock in Bow Valley over about 3 or 4 years. And after Brian died in '88, that really took the wind out of our sails. But up until that point in time, we were quite pushy. And Steve was really comfortable being in big, steep terrain. He just loved being there as much as he could. This is his birthday, hanging off a hammock on the north face of Mount Wind Tower. Another shot on Wind Tower, Steve. And just on Yam. But yeah, he was, I think if it wasn't for Steve, we probably wouldn't have done as much as we did. He just totally driven. And then he came out years later after he took a long hiatus from rock climbing, and he did the first free ascent of East End Boys with Andy Jenneru, actually, so this is him a little later. Okay, and then there's this fellow, Chalk Quinn. He was part of the Gross Cheeseman crew that they did lots of stuff together, and I teamed up with Chalk, and actually it was, Chalk doesn't get enough credit because we did this one ice climb. It was quite thin and very little ice. I went up at first and knocked ever so precious little ice off it, and then Chalk came up, and I don't know how he got up, and he weighs twice as much as me, and anyway, he did a really good job. Another shot of Chalk up on the Alpine. Chalk's one of the most underrated, better climbers in the CMC for sure. He's really, really talented. And then there's the clowns. The thing about the CMC is it's about hard climbing and stuff, or it used to be, but it's certainly still about this and lots of fun and partying and stuff. Anyway, when I was working at the co-op, I met these 2 guys, Glenn Reisenhofer and Jeff Everett, and the party was on. It just kept rolling, and so yeah. As you can see, hairstyles were quite important. And these guys, yeah, they were like kind of the newcomers. They were into trad climbing, but they liked, again, having lots of fun and just being up there. And they did actually some good routes. They did a couple of big ice climbs in the Stanley Valley and the French Maid, which were 2 fabulous ice climbs. I was supposed to be on both of those routes, but one of the guys talked to them and said, well, if you go up and do those routes, it'll just be a Marshals and Partners route. And they said, yeah, you're right, so let's just leave them behind and we'll go do it. So there you go. And a picture of Glenn on Fortress North Face. And this is a good one. Glenn came up to look at Wind Tower one day, the north face of Wind Tower. So we get to the bottom and I say, okay, you get up first, you do the first Jumar, and we had ropes all the way, or up the face a ways. So he starts Jumar, he says, this is okay. And I said, oh yeah, they're fine. And he gets up, and just before he gets to the anchor, he sees this mess, and he's going, God, now those guys' rope work is much better than that. And as he gets closer, he realizes that the rope's been cut right through, and there's about 3 or 4 strands left, and he's just like, starts freaking out. It's like, it's okay, you'll be all right. Yeah. And then this is an early form of mixed climbing. Oh yeah, early form of mixed climbing. Sorry guys. So one of these things hadn't formed up, so we just decided, okay, we'll take an extension ladder up there. I think this is Kevin Doyle's extension ladder, actually. So we skied this up into Stanley Valley, and we tried to get on a waterfall. And it was quite a day. But anyway, so that was the early mixed climbing. However, sorry, just a waterfall shot there. Anyway, they did take the mixed climbing and did some really good routes. So this is, I think, Jeff on something. Whatever. And this is getting to the base of Suffer Machine when they did the first ascent. So they were kind of on the leading edge of the whole mix thing, I think. And we were just doing it to get on the waterfall. It wasn't like to do something completely different sport. So anyway. And yeah, just a little bit of alpine climb with Glenn. This is actually kind of a good story. We went up on the Grand Central Couloir and we were going to try the route in one day, car to car. And he said, well, there's no snow and the route's in good shape, and let's go. So we did. Well, we get to the glacier and it's waist deep snow, and then we get across there and get up to the crux pitch, and all the ice is gone and stuff, just barely there. And I said, I thought you said this was in good shape. And he said, well, that was a month ago. I'm like, what? Anyway, so we get up about a pitch before the top, or half a pitch before the top. And I said, okay, well, it looks like we're going to bivvy. He goes, no, we're not. He goes, there's no way we're staying here tonight. So I said, okay. Off I went, and there was snow coming off the top, and I had a headlamp, and it's like driving down the highway in a snowstorm. You can only see 3 feet in front of you. So I get to the summit cornice, and I'm mining my way through this thing, and all of a sudden it collapses on me. And I take a 150-footer onto the blade. So there's silence and everything, and then so I say, hey, Glenn. He goes, yeah. And I said, good catch. I said, oh, thanks for that. And then I said, so I guess we're spending the night. Yeah. And then there's this fellow, Andy Generou. Andy's been one of the leading rock climbers for decades. He's still out there doing it. He was with us in the 80s and continued into the 90s, and he's still doing his thing out there. So he's been around a lot. In the 80s, he did a lot of hard repeat ascents, both on rock and ice. And let's see there. It's just one of his early forays out on the Yam, I think. Yeah, and he teamed up with me in the fall of '88, and we did 3 routes. This one's called General Pain on Yamnuska, and this is Andy surmounting the big roofs on it. Another picture of Andy. And the one thing that Andy did a number of years ago was introduce this to the climbing scene, to the traditional climbing scene. So what he does is he still does routes from the ground up, but Andy doesn't want to risk life and limb anymore, or decided not to do that about 10 or some odd years ago. So he takes a drill with him, and if it gets a little too sketchy, he puts in a bolt. But what he's doing is actually putting up routes for other climbers as well, rather than just putting up, horror shows. So it's a good style, I guess. Some people like it, some don't. Yeah. And then we've got a couple of, we have newer people coming to the club. These guys, this is Jesse Bouillon. He's off in Chamonix right now. But these guys like to drink and carry on and climb hard and stuff. And yeah, the club's definitely all about that. So people that want to look for that experience. I mean, yeah, it's a good club. And then there's this man, Steve Birch. They just freed up one of our 8 pitches the other day at Hard 512, I guess, on Yamnuska. So they're out there doing it. We couldn't, but yeah. And again, he's a real character. Likes to drink and carry on and stuff too. So yeah, good additions to the club. But really, what it's about, and I think Kevin said it, and I'd have to agree, is it's about building lifelong friendships. And doing the stuff in the mountains, you get so close, and it's so intense, and it's so comical and everything, that you just build these really incredible friendships that'll last for a lifetime. So, yeah. And we all have our reasons that we like to go out climbing, and hopefully that you know, we all go out and get, you know, some sort of satisfaction out of it. But I guess if we didn't have that, maybe life wouldn't be as quite so satisfying. So I'll just leave you with that one thought there.
So there you have it, story of a drinking club with a climbing problem, the Calgary Mountain Club. It's been a great evening. It shows what the Mountain Club is about. And tomorrow night, for those of you who have dinner tickets, we guarantee that the festivities will continue and that there will be alcohol. So for those of you who've got the shakes, don't worry, it's only 23 hours to party. I'd like to thank all the speakers, Jeff Marshall, Kevin Doyle, we'll leave anybody off, Barry Blanchard, Sharon Wood, Pat Morrow and Urs Callan. Fabulous job. I want to thank you all. Just hold on. Jesus, this has got four trainee MCs here. They've done a great job. But most of all, I want to thank Chick Scott for putting it all together. And I'm going to leave just ignore the chattering classes down here. But I'm going to leave the last word to Chick, because Chick has a bunch of people to thank. But I want to thank you all for coming and for enjoying the show. And I think it's been a great evening. So, Chick, over to you.
I wasn't quite sure this was going to happen, but I'd certainly like to thank Ken Weens, who's sitting down here, and Ken is the guy, he's the producer. I'm the creative art director, but he's the producer. And then there's Howard Bentley, and then a whole raft, Brenda, Dave Dorning, the whole Calgary Mountain Club, all these people who've worked on it, all the sponsors. So the club really pulled together for this one, and it's been a great 50th. Everybody's tired. Let's go to the bar. We are the Calgary Mountain Club.